All right, so this is a quick recording from my new student Jack, 9 years old. Fortunately, we weren't able to meet up today, man, but hopefully we'll meet up next week. But I still want to just give you a quick recording just to get you kind of like prep and ready for next week when we hopefully do meet. So just a couple of core things as a brand new to Unity person as you are. Just a couple of core basic things here to go over. And for anyone else who is getting ready to start their game development journey in Unity, these are a couple of things that I would recommend that you also make yourself familiar with. So first of all, after you've opened up your Unity, created your brand new project, this is what it will look like. This is what it should look like by default. But if it doesn't, if it lays out a little bit differently, like you see something strange like this, or something maybe even like this, that's simply just the layouts right here. So sometimes when you're working on different things, you might want a different layout. For example, when I'm doing a mobile, I have a tall layout, and you can drag these panels and just connect them in any way you want. And so this would be like the mobile screen and then the editor area, and that's just me. And of course you can make things smaller, bigger. It's all up to you, but I'm going to go back to the default layout. So this is what we should have by default. So a couple of things to point out is the hierarchy. This one right here is called a hierarchy, and so everything that will be inside your game will appear in this menu. So right now you already have two things inside there, which is a camera and the directional light, which simply produce light from a certain direction, not position. So remember that, not position. So everything inside here is what is inside your game as a whole, and everything inside here is also represented as a game object, which we're going to be making more here in just a minute. Off to the middle panel now, we have usually just these two you can switch from right here in the middle. And so the scene is where you go to actually move things around in your game and edit things and create this endless 3D world. So all I'm doing right here is a right click. Okay, so normally as you're holding down the button on your mouse, that's the usually use your middle finger on that right click. So let me just show you a quick little diagram here, just so we are all on the same page. This is your right click. It's the side of the, the same side as your right hand, and then your left click. I know it sounds like the right click should normally be that button that you're clicking all the time, because right always sounds like that yes button. And no, right click is actually not that primary click that you do. Right click is your left click. You probably already know that, so sorry, but it is a recording, so I do have to assume you do not know and just cover it just to make sure everything is good. So for those of you who already knew that, I apologize for bringing you down that road of things that you already knew. So by right clicking, you see that the mouse turns into an eyeball, and then you're able to just navigate and move around, holding it down, move around the scene. And as you move to the right of the scene, you see I'm all the way over here. If you keep going, it just kind of starts back over here, and you can just turn endlessly. All right. While holding down that button as well, you can also use your W, A, S, and D key to move around. A and D to strafe left and right, S and W to go forward and backwards. So you can really move around in this 3D space. And then the other tab here, which is the game tab. This tab now allows you to see the game from the perspective of how it would look if it was actually playing. And of course, there is a play button to actually see what happens when the game is playing. So when I hit play, notice the button now turns to blue with the white. Once it's blue, that means it's actually playing. This perspective, by the way, is coming directly from the camera in your scene. All right, so hit the play button again to stop. All right, this is the camera in your scene. There's not much to look at, and so here's a little preview. So it's hard to tell that anything is happening. So let's create something. But last panel over here, though, before we create something, last panel over here is the inspector, and just as the name kind of hint, it tells you about anything you have selected. So if I have the camera selected, give me full detailed information about the camera, including the name, tag, layer, and the transform, which is a group that has the information about position, rotation, and scale. And if I click on the directional light, about the same stuff. And then below here is the light settings for the camera. Over here, below here is the camera settings. So we're going to create our first game object. And so I want to create a cube. You can click right here on game object, then go to 3D and cube. The cube that spawns in, can't see it in the game view. If we go to scene view, I see it there. And that simply shows you that the camera, right? Look at where the camera is looking. It's not actually in the view of where the camera is. But based on the position here where the camera is at 1, and then the X, which is left and right, the camera is at 0. If I can click on this cube and just bring this cube up to 0 on the X, and then maybe 1, it should be directly in front of the camera, as you can see right there. Now I just changed the number value on this cube, but you can always just have this move tool selected, see, move tool, and drag the points to move it in the 3 dimensions, X, Y, and Z. X is all the left and right, Y is all your up and down movement, and then Z, which is this blue arrow, is that forward and backwards. You can pay attention here as these numbers change. As I go forward, it goes up, the positive. If I go backwards, it goes down into negative. Same thing for up and down, left and right. If you go right, it goes up. If you go left, it goes in the negative. If you go up, it goes in the positive. If you go down, it goes in the negative. So that's how that works. Next, we'll take a look at the other tool right up here, rotation. Lets you rotate an object. And you see how the rotation here on the Z is changing as we rotate. The colors also help you know which axis is being rotated. For example, we know that the blue is the Z. As you can see right here, blue is Z. And so as I rotate on the blue, the Z number is increasing and decreasing. The Y is green, so if I rotate this, you see the Y is increasing and decreasing as well. I'm going to zero back out these rotations, 0, 0, 0, to bring it back to normal. And let's look at the scale tool. Same deal here. You can drag certain points to make it different shape. And then once you have the shape you like, there's also a middle one here that you can drag to just evenly distribute it, make it smaller or bigger, but it keeps that shape. I'm actually going to flatten this down to make a nice little platform. And you can see the camera. Need a move tool. I'll bring the camera right over here near the platform. This time, we'll go to 3D. We go to Game Object, 3D Object, and create a sphere. And your challenge here is to simply look at the position where you are. Look at everything, and I want you to bring that sphere over here towards just right above the plane, and that'll be your challenge. I expect you to just pause the video at this point and see if you can do that. Just bring the ball right over here above the plane. So go ahead and pause the video and do that. Now, I assume now you'd unpause the video. I'm gonna show you how I would do it myself. Since I know I'm over here where it's, you know, really relatively low numbers, I could like try to, you know, drag it and slowly navigate my way over here until it's there. And don't forget, like if you're trying to move the Z, this one here, and you're over here behind it, it's hard to target it. So remember, you can navigate yourself, move around until you're in that position to really click on stuff. And voila, just like that. Now that's one way, but let me just bring it back over into yonder, wherever it was. Okay, and I find that it might just be easier for me to come up here, and I know that like the camera is at like really low values, so I can just bring this over to a lower value first, like for example 0, 0, and 0, and it's relatively closer. Then I just simply do whatever is remaining, little fixer-uppers here and there, right above the plane. Another thing I could have done is simply know that, well, left and right, or forward and backwards, that is the Z. So the plane Z is at, let's just say, -5. So on the sphere, I could just also make the sphere -5, and it comes back this way, and it's exactly right above the plane. So if the cube below is at, let's say, 5 on the X, I can also make the sphere 5 on the X, so it goes left and right. And then I can even make the camera 5 on the X, which is left and right. So now everything is in the exact center of the screen. So that's just movement. And you can see that all of these are game objects. All of these are represented as game objects. So later on, when we get into the coding and we're talking about game object, we're talking about everything that shows here in the hierarchy. Each game object has its own group of components, which is something we're going to be looking into as well. Components. So for example, we have this ball here as a sphere, mesh filter, then we have a mesh renderer and a mesh collider, and then there's a button to add more components. And of course we have the group for transform. Everything has a transform. The transform is the details for our position, rotation, and scale for everything inside the scene. So just a thought process here for when you're developing stuff. If you want an object to follow another object, you don't technically want it to follow the game object itself, because these are the game object, but you want it to follow the game object's transform position, right? That's different, because these objects here are not moving. They're not actually moving around in the game. These are just the game objects. Game objects don't move. The game object's position is what's moving. So not the game object, in a sense, not the game object itself, which is right here in the hierarchy. All right, so with that, let's just have a little bit more fun with this. Right now, if we hit play, it's going to switch back to the game view. Boom, just like that. And then this turns blue. And this is what the camera sees. So this is what the game kind of looks like. I think I want to make the camera a little bit higher. If I do that right now, like that, I say that looks great. But notice as soon as I hit stop, it goes right back down. So anytime you make changes while it's playing, none of that will be saved, and you'll be sad once you find that out. So just a good rule is to make sure that you're not playing while you're making changes. Changes that you make while you're playing are kind of like just one of those tests to see how things look, but it goes right back to what it was before. So I'm just gonna bring the camera up a little bit like that. And when we hit play, we notice nothing happened. And that's because Unity is not going to make any assumptions for you. It's not going to say, hey, you want gravity, and give you gravity. It's full, like, it's completely your responsibility. But I mean, it's good. If you take the example of Minecraft, the sand has gravity, but then the cobblestone does not. And so that's basically the developer given the sand the ability to have gravity, and just not giving it to the cobblestone. Same deal here is whatever you want to have gravity, you can give that gravity, and other things that you don't want to have gravity, just leave them as is. So for example, this sphere, there's an add component button that I mentioned earlier. We can add, and there's many components in here, categorized, physics components. There's tons of them in here. But for gravity, there's also, don't forget, there's also physics 2D. But since this is 3D, we go to the regular physics. But for gravity, you would simply need the rigid body. And see, the rigid body now is a component that's just added to the sphere. If I click on the cube, see, cube is just, light is just whatever it was before. Nothing has changed, but the sphere now has the extra component here, rigid body. And of course, you can add more than one component. You can add tons of component to something. This rigid body, though, is enough to give it mass. See, it now has mass, drag, angular drag, and then use gravity, which is checked here by default. And with this little triangle here, we can collapse them. So like if we want to see more of what's going on, it could be kind of hard when everything is open like this to like find what you're looking for. So like I usually just close the stuff that I'm not looking for, and then boom, rigid body, right? So and then there's more stuff in here we can mess with, but just the rigid body alone gives it just a little bit of gravity that we need. So now let's go into scene view, bring it up a little bit more. I kind of want to see it, but about there. And then when we hit play, it should fall to the floor. All right. So thank you for checking this out today. In our next week, hopefully, when we meet, we're going to add maybe a little bit of bounds to this. If you were able to create this on your own as well, you notice that it just kind of falls and really flat. There's no reaction to the impact it's making on the ground. We're gonna also look at some more unique components, and then if the time permits, we'll actually do just a little bit of script, and we don't want to get too hard into the code until we fully understand Unity itself. But we're gonna gauge that. It's gonna be gauged based on how quickly you pick up the information, how quickly you make sense of what's going on. Then we'll go faster into the programming part. But with that, thank you for watching, and have a great day. And I'll catch you next week.